Welcome back to Rackspace Solve Dallas and the first breakout session. Here to talk about using the right tool for the job, how to build, connect, and secure a hybrid cloud. From Rackspace, please welcome Matt Shover.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us out at Solve today. Thank you so much for attending this session as well. We're going to talk about hybrid cloud today. Odd question to start out with. How many of you, show of hands, have seen the movie Inception? Wow, okay. So actually most of everybody. For the people who haven't seen Inception, I'm going to try to explain it without ruining it to you, and then I'm going to show you a better IT summary of it. So the whole thing with Inception is they're trying to plant an idea in somebody's mind. And in order to do this, they hack into his dream. And just to kind of make the plot a little more complicated, they can hack into dreams within dreams and then even go further down into dreams. And the further down they go, the slower that time moves. It moves much slower than it does kind of in awake real time. So I found this fantastic tweet that did not happen to make this slide deck, but that's okay. But I will summarize it for you. It basically said, the main point of Inception, when you run a VM inside of a VM inside of a VM, it runs really slow. So, totally apt. So real quick, in the way of introductions, my name is Matt Shover. I've been a Racker for about 8 years. I started out in our internal IT organization, so I was consuming platform and infrastructure, making tools and applications for Rackers and our customers. And then in the last 3 years, I kind of made the jump over to the different side of the house with public cloud and with Rac Connect and hybrid cloud, where I've been kind of providing these things a little more. So today, I really want to share some things with you, really the best of what I've learned over the last 3 years working in Rac Connect that I hope will kind of help you make more effective and informed decisions about platforms and hybrid cloud. And really kind of 3 key takeaways that I'd like to share. The first, what are the major platforms and infrastructure that comprise a hybrid cloud and how has that changed? When is the right particular platform or infrastructure going to be the right one for the job? And lastly, how can you secure all of these otherwise disparate components together? So first, talk a little bit about of philosophy about the wrong tool for the job. The only reason you use the wrong tool for the job is because the right one isn't readily available. So I love these pictures. These are all pretty fantastic. But when you use the wrong tool for the job, it's almost all cost and no benefit. It's extra energy, it's extra time, it's extra money, and there's always going to be some sort of unintended effect. So when I look at the guy sawing the pizza, is that going to be like sawdust or Parmesan cheese? You don't really know. There's always going to be some kind of weird unintended effect there. Actually, real quick, back to this. When we look at this kind of analogous to how it will look in the hybrid cloud, this may be someone that has a high-performance database that's extremely I/O intensive and trying to shoehorn that into cloud. That may not be the right fit. And the whole thing with hybrid cloud is you want to use the infrastructure of the platform that's going to be the right fit. And when we do that, when we use the right tool for the job, things are boring, but in every good sense of the word. Things just work. You get uninterrupted vacations and uninterrupted sleep, and that's the whole point, again, of hybrid cloud, the right infrastructure or the right platform for the workload or application that you're using. So, kind of to our first point, what makes up a hybrid cloud? Traditionally, in the past, I think it's been marrying up very simply a public cloud and a private cloud. I think that's evolved over time, and I've absolutely seen that evolve over time as well, to connect multiple platforms or infrastructures, not only in a single data center, but across different geographies. And when we're talking about infrastructure, the 3 main types we're going to talk about are going to be a public cloud, a private cloud, and custom or dedicated gear as well. The part that I think we're really going to see more growth and innovation around is going to be with these different geographies, whether it's going to be data centers for multiple service providers, customer premises, or other premises altogether. I think that's going to be a major kind of point where we're going to be seeing a lot of innovation in the future. So, hybrid cloud is really the best of all worlds. The value of it is that you're using the right platform and you're really customizing the right infrastructure for the job. You don't have to choose just one. You get to choose all of really the best one that's going to work for you. And furthermore, it's greater than the sum of its parts in that it can help you overcome some of the cloud security challenges that you have, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we get further in the presentation. So, when is a particular platform or infrastructure going to be the right one or the optimal one for the job? So, kind of food for thought here. As we're going through these things, we're going to talk a little bit about private cloud, public cloud, and dedicated. maybe you have an application that you're working on, or maybe a set of applications. Kind of think about best fit for these as we explore these different options. Considerations for platform, there's a lot of things to think about here, right? It could be security, compliance, performance, something like that. One thing I'll zoom in on here based on a conversation I had with a friend that's still in IT at Rackspace is speed to delivery. And he talked about, at Rackspace, we have a lot of internal groups that will come to IT and say, hey, look, I have an application that needs to be up. It really needed to be up yesterday, but tomorrow is acceptable. They never come to us and say, hey, do you have a 12-week plan for this? So it's very important for kind of the reputation of the group of IT to be able to provide quickly, not only to get it up on that correct infrastructure, but to integrate it with things like single sign-on and make sure that it's monitored and has antivirus and all that good stuff on it. It's also incredibly important for my friend and what he's talking about, kind of for his personal brand to be able to deliver. So, and that's just one of many considerations that we have. By the way, virtual options are fantastic for kind of fulfilling that particular case. So we're going to go into kind of the pros and cons of each one of these, and I'm going to throw yet more analogies out here. So a great way to think about public cloud is kind of like thinking about renting a hotel room. Very salient for this as well. We're in a hotel. So with a hotel room, it's kind of a utility billing model. You only pay for what you use, right? It's fantastic for a bursting type use case. If your in-laws are coming into town to visit, you don't have to build a whole new house for them. You just say, hey, there's a hotel down the street, go stay there. All right, when we talk about speed of delivery, it's right there. There's space that's available for you. It's efficient. You're not having to build something. All you have to do is go in, put your key in the door, go in and sleep. Pretty easy stuff when we look at what this actually means for public cloud itself. You're on top of the operating system. You drop your application in there, and you do any kind of configuration management that you want to, and you're good to go. On the downside, when we stick with our analogy, it's utility billing, so there could be some sort of unpredictable cost associated with this. Kind of like when you get your electricity bill, it's always going to be a little bit of a surprise when you open up the envelope or the email, whatever you get that tells you what your bill is. When we talk about security and compliance, you might have, if you're in a hotel, a neighbor that's kind of having a little party over there. This is what we refer to as the noisy neighbor model for public cloud. And then this is where the analogy starts to break down a little bit, full disclosure. When we talk about gaps for sophisticated enterprise customers, these are things that I think you're going to see us and a lot of other service providers work on to help close. But when we talk about things like traditional policies or identity and access management, stuff like that, maybe you're at a company where spinning a server outside of the walls of the company physically is like Jack Bauer in 24 going rogue, and you're totally crazy for doing that. And when you get back, you're going to have to talk to the director. Stuff like that absolutely exists. The other part is going to be specialization. There's absolutely going to be a special skill set or set of skill sets associated with actually consuming public cloud and using things like configuration management in concert with it so that you can do things very, very quickly. So either you need to know those things or you need to be working with someone who does. Okay, when we look at the value of private cloud, think about private cloud not so much as you have a hotel room, but you actually build the hotel. And it can be a big hotel, it can be a small hotel, but you're really kind of fronting the cost for that thing. So again, for your VMs, you have awesome speed of delivery. You can spin those things up in a matter of minutes. Security and compliance is going to be a little better than it is for public cloud, depending on how you look at it, in that because you own the hotel, you can control who comes in and comes out. If someone's being loud, you call the manager and the problem just kind of goes away. And then because you're managing it, it's going to be a lot easier. Again, when we kind of pull it back away from the analogy back to the real world, you actually own kind of the management plane and the security plane with it, so you can do what you need to there. Cost, obviously, you're having to front the bill for the hotel in the first place. So when we look at something like scalability, you can build the hotel really big and have a bunch of excess capacity, or you can build it really small and maybe run out. That's something that you absolutely have to manage there. You get the freedom associated with being able to manage your security, which means you also have the responsibility of having to manage and administrate it as well. And then performance, again, is where our analogy starts to come up a little bit short here. There is going to be a performance tax or a virtualization tax associated with it. Unlike real taxes, though, it's actually gone down. It's actually almost non-significant now, but it is something to keep in mind. Okay, lastly, physical servers. These things, kind of think of it like a house. You can custom build a house to your specific requirements, or you can go get a pre-existing house. Very, very cost effective if it's well sized and it's used for persistent workloads. So if you're in a 4,000 square foot house and you're the only one there, probably not the most efficient thing. But look, it's solid. It's kind of the gold standard when talk about doors and windows and how all the construction and how everything is built and how it works. It's been a long time, just like it has been for physical servers as well. Security and compliance, when we talk about these things in the physical world for computers, they've been around there for a while. We have IDS WAF firewalls, just like when we talk about the house, you have high-grade locks and security systems. It's a well-known type thing. No virtualization overhead, by the way, because you're not virtual, and you get very predictable performance out. Time provision, sometimes building a house takes a little longer. And cost, it's something when we kind of talked about this before. If you're in a big house and you're the only one there, it's not the most efficient thing. But if it's a small house and the rooms are filled up efficiently, or if it's just a small house altogether, it can actually be incredibly cost effective. A lot of people discount physical servers against virtual options thinking that it's going to be more expensive, and that's not always the case. Just something to keep in mind there. Management, as any homeowner will tell you, if your AC goes out, you're footing the bill for it. So something to keep in mind. There's a little disruptor here, and we're working on this. This is something that we've actually had for some time. In one of our data centers, we have a new version of this coming out soon. It's called On Metal. And this kind of mixes a couple of worlds here, and I want to talk about this. In terms of analogy, On Metal would almost kind of be like Airbnb, if you guys are familiar, where you can actually go just kind of rent a house instead of a hotel room. On Metal is going to be bare metal that you can provision with an API and have it going up in a number of minutes. Right now it's available in our IA data center, and it's going to be available in additional data centers soon when we have the new version that comes out. Additionally, On Metal will be working with Rac Connect, which is what I'm going to talk about here in just a bit. So how can you connect and bring all these otherwise disparate components together in a hybrid cloud? Really two ways of doing so, very similar to what we talk about with managed cloud. There's a DIY model where you can select all these different platforms or infrastructure. You can go through and build this and secure this and do it yourself. If you have expertise in-house to do it, it's something that you really need if you're going to do this. The other option is doing something more managed, like what we do at Rackspace with Rac Connect. We have done this for thousands upon thousands of customers. I think we have a fantastic economy of scale for doing this. And the cool thing is, if any one component, whether it's the connection part or the security part or the private cloud, the public cloud dedicated, any of that breaks, you have one call to make. It's supported all under a single umbrella. So I want to kind of really dig into Rac Connect 3 here and get into kind of some reference architectures and some diagrams and really show you how it works. So the first thing I think bears talking about with Rac Connect 3, by the way, something that we debuted late last year and we've had fantastic adoption. We're really, really happy with it. It's built on what we call cloud networks, which are single tenant isolated networks in the cloud. If you think about that, single tenant means you're the only actual customer on a given network, and these networks are there in the cloud, and you can attach cloud servers to them. If you think about a firewall or a load balancer, and you stick that front and center in your environment, it's very, very simply different segments hanging off of it. Segments that go into the cloud, or segments that go into dedicated, or to private cloud, or even to other premises. And then I talked a little before about how hybrid cloud can actually help bring some security into the public cloud. We can do that by using things like IDSs and web application firewalls and actually introducing them in front of cloud servers. And I'll actually talk a little bit more about that in a different slide. Okay, this is going to be a reference arc. Actually, you know what? This is an older version of the presentation, so I'm going to tackle this right now. We talked a little bit about the security devices. Like I said, an IDS, a web application firewall. If you want to do something like perfect forward secrecy, you can do that as well. Because these are simply different segments, very, very easy to go in and troubleshoot, very easy for auditors to go in and understand, and very, very simple to run and operate. When we're talking about an IDS or something like that, you can actually monitor traffic between different segments. Say you wanted to monitor all the traffic between your app servers and your web servers in the cloud. You could do that. You could do it just in front of your databases. Really kind of up to you how you want to hook that up and then how you want to do that. So, all right, This is a use case that we're seeing, I think, more and more, customers that really want to go off-premise. So we're doing this today primarily with Site VPN. We have a new offering coming out here soon. I can't give a specific timeline for it, but it's going to be called Rac Connect Anywhere, which is going to allow you to use some additional options other than site-to-site VPNs for connectivity. What we see here is it's really just kind of a different segment that hangs off of this firewall or off of this load balancer and allows you to get to other offices or other data centers or even for remote workers as well. Same thing where we have multiple segments in the cloud if we want them. A load balanced use case here, we'll see this. One of the most popular use cases that we see in hybrid cloud is something that we call the bursting use case. And we have a customer that has a sports event once a year. During that time of the year, they will see something like 80 or 90% of their traffic within a 3-day period. It totally doesn't make sense for them to maintain this dedicated environment year-round if they're only going to need it for 3 days out of the year. So what they'll do is they'll actually share a load balancer pool, spin up a bunch of cloud servers literally for 5 or 6 days, and then spin those things back down. So this is fantastic for them. They're only renting servers for a few days. This is almost like their in-laws are coming in town and they're saying, we'll get a hotel room for you. Kind of that case there. All right, so quick summary of Rac Connect and what it does. It's our hybrid cloud offering. Just like with hybrid cloud, it eliminates the need to have to choose a single option. Like I said before, it leverages kind of that device, whether it's going to be a firewall or a load balancer, and that puts it kind of front and center in your network. By the way, if you want that thing to be HA, if you want to use an HA firewall in addition to a HA load balancer, you can do that as well. There's all sorts of options that we can support in there, along with all sorts of security devices as well. And lastly, we have a customer API with it, where you can do things like populate cloud servers in and out of load balancer pools, or provision public IPs. So really, really good stuff with Rac Connect. If anybody has any questions on that, by the way, I'll absolutely be outside, and I'd love to, obviously I love talking about Rac Connect and hybrid cloud, but would be happy to answer questions there. And I think we'll have a short Q&A after this as well. A quick note on security. A lot of times, I know I showed that table, kind of all these different things that we need to think about when we're choosing the right infrastructure. Security is something that has really dictated that in the past. And security, although it's still a concern, is something that I don't think we need to let that necessarily drive our decision primarily. It's what are the other factors that we want to consider with going for a given platform if we want to go to, say, public cloud or something like that, and then test security. See if there's a compensating control. Maybe if you do something for encryption at rest, that can mitigate that control, and you can actually use public cloud because you find that it meets the other cases that you need it to. So rather than letting security drive it, test for security after the fact. If it doesn't work, then that's fine. It's the hybrid cloud. You can easily move to another infrastructure, but it's just something to consider there. All right, so 3 things to remember, kind of what we talked about initially. The components that actually comprise a public cloud. We talked about private cloud, public cloud, and customer dedicated options. We also talked about spanning multiple geographies as well. The second, very much about choosing the right tool for the job. It's very important to choose the right tool for the job because things run smoother and easier. And the only reason that people don't choose the right tool for the job is because it's not readily available. With hybrid cloud, it absolutely is. And then lastly, we talked about kind of a DIY or a managed approach for building a hybrid cloud. This is something that we have done at Rackspace, again, for thousands upon thousands of customers, and we have a lot of expertise with. So with that, I think we have a few minutes we can do Q&A. What questions do you guys have? Jokes, stories, humorous anecdotes? All right, guys, if there's no questions, I'll be hanging out outside for the rest of the session today. Thank you so much for attending today. Very much appreciate it.